Okay, so we're recording. So I'd like to welcome as our next session Waseem Farooq, who's going to be talking to us around the critical role of the area information specialist towards decolonisation of the library.
Anyway, thank you very much for your interest in this topic, and thank you very much for attending here. And also thank you. I thank the conference organizers for being patient with me and having me on here. So I'll shut the camera to expand the bandwidth. Okay, so this presentation is on the critical role of the area specialist towards the decolonisation of the library. So in this presentation, I will be focusing on the role of the area specialist in the process of decolonising the library. Although the acquisition of indigenous resources from the Global South has been suggested by Joss Damon in an LSE blog in 2019, I will be looking at what this can involve and the lack of area specialists needed to achieve this in the UK. To illustrate this, I will be looking at Middle East librarians in the context of UK higher education funded institutes. I will not be discussing decolonisation in depth here in terms of definition and background, but we'll go straight into what it means in the context of libraries. Excuse me. So briefly, it's a calling for a better historical awareness of the context in which scholarly content has been produced. Decolonization then is reviewing the world beyond the hierarchies of race and civilization that previously informed thinking and what was worth studying and how it was studied. Until the mid-20th century, so thinking informed and justified the expansion of colonial rule in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. While some of these assumptions may have been challenged and deconstructed, some continue to persist. Some theories and practices of development still depend on assumptions of backwardness in post-colonial societies. So the decolonization can be interpreted as challenging such assumptions, models, and frameworks that include bias towards formerly colonized regions. A crucial question is the relationship between the location and identity of the writer, what and how they write about it. For example, it would certainly be flagged as problematic if writing on women and gender was presented exclusively by men. Would this truly be representative of diversity? Subsequently, how will it inspire a different perspective or different perspectives? Similarly, it cannot be acceptable that writings about international regions or global affairs are represented only by scholars or writers based in the global north. This will certainly influence our perspectives. This calls for diversifying the sources in our libraries so that engagement with diverse scholarly perspectives can take form. A diverse library enables rich knowledge and increased intellectual rigor. Decolonization then is a call for better representation in areas that are being studied. For example, courses on the Middle East should have a fair representation of scholars from or in the Middle East in their reading lists and consequently in their libraries. Of late, there has been a growing number of calls, conferences, and literature on decolonizing the university and the curriculum. There have been similar developments for libraries to introspect and reevaluate their collections. Libraries have an integral role in the process of decolonizing the university and the curriculum. So what are the steps taken towards decolonizing the library? Libraries have been trying to decolonize their libraries in various by various methods. Some examples of potential provocations and assessing criteria are on the slide. So to decolonize, we need to work towards diversity and inclusivity, audit reading lists, include gender, ethnicity, in additional to usual publication information in reading lists, That would be great. Elicit discussions with students about reading lists, create toolkits for academics, advocate for fair representation and recognition within subject headings, being aware of overwhelmingly biased content in spite of being of highly scholarly works by BME authors. So diversifying a library's collection is just one aspect of a decolonization effort. Finding ways of obtaining indigenous material through local vendors, changing ways of making material accessible and sharing it with the public are a part of it. So in the milieu of the Middle East, building locally authored and locally published context collections around themes relevant to Middle East societies. So to assist to decolonize in decolonizing library collections, one would ideally need a regional specialist. So for the Middle East library, for the Middle East collections or for Middle Eastern studies, one would think a Middle East librarian would be useful. So what does the Middle East librarian role involve? So a profile of a Middle East librarian, here goes. The Middle East librarian is often providing services beyond the Middle East. At times, their services extend to where there is a presence of Muslims. So in addition to Arabic linguistic skills, Persian and Turkish language skills are often sought in candidates. Thus, the geographical region can extend from China to Mauritania and from Central Asia to the Balkans. To be a subject librarian in this region then would entail having a degree in the subject. So a combination of subject specialism and a professional degree in information studies. Middle East librarianship is about making specialized library resources in all formats from or about the Middle East available to the scholars and researchers who need them. However, there are challenges of providing access to such specialized collections. The following are unique aspects of a Middle East librarian's workload, but this can also extend to other Global South regions. In terms of acquiring material, acquisitions tend to be from various vendors with different conditions of purchase, so there isn't a one-stop shop. So one needs to be good at managing relationships with multiple vendors, whom quite often fall short of the usual institutional purchasing standards that we are accustomed to. The publishing market in the regions are greatly decentralized, which means that often one needs to be aware of unauthorized editions and ISBNs linked to multiple titles or even editions. So to acquire quality resources, then ideally one would need to travel to the regions and personally evaluate the acquisitions. Often subject specialists or area specialists as such travel to book fairs in the regions where they can get the latest publications in one place. Political instabilities in the targeted regions can make acquisitions more challenging. There are various censorship challenges at times, so one would need to know vendors that can assist. Negotiating export licenses may also be required. Navigating regimes that restrict export and would rather destroy certain material. And also making payments can also be a challenge, whether buying online or in person. Short print, they often have short print runs, so this means that the book can become out of print very quickly and then become difficult to purchase. As for e-resources, they are a great challenge from global South regions. Ebooks and journals are not systematically distributed or stored. So in our library, we used to receive Persian journals with the CD-ROM and a PD file of an issue. But then we need to have a challenge of how to systematically and ethically make that journal available electronically, which is quite difficult. So electronic publications are until recent scarce and of poor quality. So this is, however, this is changing at a much slower pace. Compared to the e-resources market in the global north, the south are still working their way up. In terms of cataloging, once we receive a resource, we naturally would need to make it available to patrons, so it needs to be cataloged. So the usual practice is to catalog using the original language. So this would mean that the catalog usually includes bibliographic details in the original script of the source. Additionally, the record will also include a transliteration, which is quite standard for non-Roman languages. So essentially, the details are entered twice, adding to the cataloging time. So, and this can also this has in the past and still does pose challenges to library management systems, depending on the script, the indexing systems. So at times, poorly organized or absent information in publications can be problematic to differentiate the work. So sometimes it's difficult to find the publishing date. They may not include the publishing date, or they may not include the place of publication as well. This can be a challenge for catalogers. And for reference services, the role includes finding and evaluating Middle Eastern studies resources. Often there is a lack of Western language translations of primary sources. So this makes it particularly challenging to make Middle East sources accessible. So the Middle Eastern librarian requires a deeper knowledge of the area and involves wider responsibilities towards patrons, and then in other fields of librarianship. So the specialist librarian has a greater role. They're not simply mediators between resources and users. So what is the current state of subject librarians in the UK? So library management restructuring in the past decade has seen the erosion of subject librarians and them being replaced with generic functional librarians. This blanket restructuring has led to the area specialists being removed from the designated areas and reassigned to a generic role with responsibilities for liaising for a varying number of disciplines. So the restructuring is sometimes a good way to respond to the changing information environment and the shift of emphasis from collections to users. However, some blanket changes can have an impact on essential collections that could be seen as a step backwards in terms of decolonisation. So here's an example of a restructuring plan at the University of Manchester. This was done in 2012. So obviously this restructuring has had an impact on acquisitions, or on generally the services that the library can provide for Middle East Studies Department, for example. So due to these restrictions, even at the designated research library, there is a significant impact, or there was a significant impact on the level of acquisitions and collection development, as there was no liaison or subject specialist librarian. The number of requests, therefore, from academics at the Middle East Department for the vernacular resources fell drastically. The cataloguing was done by the reassigned subject specialist. So in one particular university, the specialist was reassigned. So fortunately, they did have the specialist there, so who could still buy material at request and also catalog the material. At another university, there is no proactive collection development. So the library purchases Middle East related resources on demand, and the Arabic cataloging is outsourced as and when needed. However, this also poses challenges of when such libraries receive the material, then if they don't have anybody that can read the material, it can sort of pose challenges of making sure that the title is catalogued correctly. So at another university since 2015, restructuring there was, so there was no acquisitions of works in Middle Eastern languages. So the library, however, was reluctantly accepting donations. So since the last, there was another subject librarian after the previous librarian retired, but the librarian left in 2014. So since then, they even were hesitant to accept donations, and the donations that they did receive or accept were catalogued by voluntarily by the previous subject librarian who had retired in 2012. And so he reported that in 2018 they had catalogued 20 books from the Middle East. So from a decolonisation perspective, there is a greater need for area specialist librarians as there is no shortage of courses available for Middle Eastern studies. And there seems to be a growing trend of universities offering Middle East related courses. So to gauge this, I used the UCAS website to search for courses that were offered. So as you can see, when searching for Middle East Studies courses on UCAS, this was did this in 2019. The results suggested about 22 universities offering a total of 228 Middle East related courses between them. So these were primarily undergraduate or postgraduate taught courses. The actual figure can be higher than mentioned. So if you include research, MPhil courses and PhD courses, the number would be higher. So despite there being a good number of universities offering Middle East Studies courses, the number of related librarians in the field are diminishing or have diminished. So in this sort of, I listed all the libraries that were offering, all the universities that were offering Middle East related courses, and pointed out the ones that have a Middle Eastern librarian. So in green, you can see that only 3 libraries out of 22 have a dedicated Middle East subject librarian. And that's, of course, University of SOAS, University of London, University of Oxford, and University of Cambridge. So highlighted in amber, they used to have a dedicated or a liaison librarian in the past, since 2012, and although there are other libraries that do have generic librarians that seek to serve the Middle East faculty and provide some form of reference services, this can be challenging when trying to acquire a catalogue and provide a thorough reference service when the librarian does not have the subject knowledge. So there are some university libraries do have liaison librarians for the Middle East Studies department who try to provide service as best as they can. So when one adds Islamic studies to the search, then so often Islamic studies is taught on the Middle Eastern Studies departments or within the Middle Eastern Studies departments. So when you add Islamic studies courses, then the number of providers and courses increase significantly. So a total of 31 universities offer a combination of 324 various courses between them. Despite the addition of Islamic studies, the number of university libraries that have dedicated specialist librarians remain the same, sadly. If the trend of this restructuring continues, and if area and language specialists are eliminated, then this would have a devastating impact on area-specific research and their related academic departments. So the impact on collection development and management. So, the elimination of area specialists has resulted in fewer acquisitions from the regions being researched. So this means that they are oblivious to the scholarly production in those regions unless one goes out of their way to try to find these themselves. There is, of course, valuable and carefully curated historical material at many university libraries, which was acquired in better days. However, to remain current and abreast of research, this would require actively seeking and acquiring current research resources from these regions. Secondly, to continue quality collection development and to retain an up-to-date collection would mean to identify material that have become out of date. So then again, this would also require a special librarian to evaluate duplicate copies and assess the feasibility of restoring, repairing, preserving, or conserving material. Finally, this with the rising awareness of decoloniality and decolonization, it has become even more essential to assign and essential to retain an area and language specialist librarian. How else would it be possible to ensure that areas being studied and taught are being represented effectively by scholarly opinions from within the area and from without? Well, thank you very much for bearing with me in this presentation. I think if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you so much, Waseem. That was really interesting, and I think speaks to a lot of us, where even we've had experiences of collection development in an area that we maybe don't feel hugely confident on sometimes, let alone if you're then bringing that regional knowledge and the language knowledge as well. If anybody has any questions, do feel free to send them to me as a private message, or if you don't mind them being public, you can also put them on the public chat. Just while I'm waiting, if any more questions come in, something was occurring to me, Waseem, which was around what do you think the potential is for collaboration with librarians that are working in different regions of the world, perhaps, so we can draw on some of that knowledge, that local knowledge and experience as well. Particularly, I'm thinking in terms of many universities now setting up partnerships with colleges and other institutions in other countries.
Indeed, that's the best way forward now, I think, with because obviously because of the reduction of these area specialists, to bring about to try to get new people to join the profession is going to be very difficult, because there aren't any job opportunities available. So yes, the best way forward, I think, is to collaborate. So I would like to see universities collaborating. So we all attempt to, what I've noticed, that we purchase a lot of research material, and how much of that research material is actually being used. The University of Cambridge purchasing research material in Arabic or Middle Eastern languages, University of Oxford, the British Library is purchasing material themselves. Everybody has limited space, everybody has limited budgets, everybody has limited manpower as well. So it would be good to communicate, collaborate, and cooperate, where these purchase areas can be assigned to area specialism can be assigned to universities, and they can purchase the material in those areas, and then they can collaborate, meaning that obviously the holding university will have priority, the researchers will have priority, but these resources can often be shared, and a lot of the resources are just kept on the shelves and not being touched. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of expertise abroad as well, in America, for example, and even in Europe as well. So obviously these there can be collaborations, and for example, with the University of McGill, for example, and the Library of Congress, we can see the collections that they may have and we don't have. We could try to fill our gaps in the research collections.
That's brilliant, wonderful. Thank you very much. I think we've got one of the questions come in. So one of our attendees would like to know what your thoughts are. In the current COVID-19 situation, have you seen any redirection of your budget for Middle Eastern materials towards mainstream electronic publications in English? And are you aware of that happening at any other institutions?
That's
a redirection of budget.
That's a very good question. I haven't really been communicating with other colleagues in the field, but in our library as well, we have also done this. The budget that was allocated for printed material has been redirected to online resources, which often cost a lot more than printed books. So we've taken this opportunity or this period to try to build up our e-resources wherever we possibly can, and also try to access whatever scarce Middle East resources that are available online as well. But they often cost a lot of money, and our library itself is very small. We have a limited budget, and our users are very few. So I think it would be great to have a collaboration between other university libraries that do offer Middle Eastern studies courses. But also have the similar budget constraints as well. So there could be collaboration in terms of purchasing as a consortium.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Any last questions? We've got a couple of minutes left before we need to move on to the next session. Okay, I don't think there's anything, any other questions, at least not in the time that we have left. So if we could just ask everybody to express their thanks to Waseem for sharing his knowledge and his expertise with us. Really interesting talk, and I think one which I've certainly not heard covered, and that having that perspective as well So it's been wonderful to be able to give you a venue in order to share that knowledge and experience. Thank you very much.
So thank you all, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here.